Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Have you ever experienced a demon?
A few times. I suspect my ex of being demonically possessed. She is on a self-destructive path where everything she does is run through a filter of how to do so illegally or involve an illegal aspect. She made herself a polarizing person to the point where bars she would go to would be suffering from her presence. Most became hostile to her, and she was doing her thing of making the current bar she was going to the same mess. She would often try to get cleaners into the home to pay them with drugs. Of course, I would not allow someone who would accept such payment into the home. She had taken over my home with their little operation, putting locks on the doors of the storage closets without my permission and filling them from the floor to the roof with their drugs and supplies. I called the cops after we had a fight when all I wanted was for her to scale her operation down a bit so things like the vacuum cleaner and light bulbs could be stored in the closet. But this, of course, escalated into a screaming match as there can be no compromise or de-escalation on her part. She threatened to divorce Chris Chan me, as we were technically common law, so I called the cops to get her little drug operation busted. She took off, but the cops didn't really care about the drugs and told me to take it up with the courts. This amused my ex, and she was giggling manically as she often does when she thinks she got one over someone. That night, as I was trying to sleep, I saw a foul face that changed its shape disgustingly every couple seconds to something equally horrendous. It was laughing at me and mocking me. She and I got into another fight a few months later, out of the blue, where she started insulting the neighbors, the neighborhood, started slamming things and calling me whatever awful thing she could think of. I found a security camera later, so she was trying to goad me into a fight to use a recording as blackmail. I was not responding to any of it, and this made her more angry and act more atrocious. Eventually, at midnight, she was screaming out on the porch, insulting me and everyone, and I had called the cops as it was a noise complaint. They advised me to get an emergency protective order the next day, but refused to remove her. Of course, the manic giggling began again. She kept quoting an irrelevant verse from the Bible over and over, even when the cops were present. The next day, I went to the courts first thing in the morning. She somehow got there before me to get an emergency protective order served against me and have me kicked out of my own home. She made a scene and left. The judge granted me my emergency protective order, and the cops removed her from the home. All that day, she was arming and disarming the security system and lock remotely, until I removed her access and was calling me from her number and her mother's hash only to hang up. She slipped up, though, and left a message, so with that as proof, I was able to have a warrant put out for her arrest, and she missed the first hearing of the emergency protective order because she was now hiding from the cops. I guess she crashed her car, likely drunk, and wanted to come back to the city and waltz back into the home like nothing happened. There is some pretty consistent ghost activity in my home, 2 spots where they like to hang out and can be spotted as small prisms of light. Last night I began to catalog some of her things when I saw something move in her room. It was man-sized but not shaped. It was just a briefly appearing apparition that I did not get more than a fleeting glance at. As I said, it was not human-shaped, just a wide thing that moved. I yelled at it that I would cast it from this home the same as I cast out its vessel.
In my nightmares, I've encountered many things you might call demons. They can appear as abstract shapes and sounds, humanoid, symbolic. It is subjective to each person. They typically try to intimidate or scare in some way. You can overpower most if you have some willpower. The most troublesome are ones that are manipulative. Demons can use feelings of lust, your lack of awareness, or your values to navigate you into doing something you otherwise wouldn't, particularly in an easily manipulable dream. In a dream, you have complete power if you're aware of the fact you're dreaming. Where they're most powerful to directly harm you is in sleep paralysis states where you're half asleep and powerless physically. Maintain awareness. Try learning how to lucid dream, and they can't get what they want from you.
I think I have. Be me. Fast asleep after the night shift. Wake up, can't move. A black specter crawls towards me. Atmosphere sounds like a vacuum cleaner. The specter screams in my ear, and I hear the sound of a million voices screaming. Wake up. Just sleep paralysis, right? Thought so too. I was at a low point in my life. Drugs, porn addiction, etc. Years later, another low point in my life, but getting better. Be asleep. Sound of vacuum cleaners again. I quickly regained the ability to move, turn my head. A gray creature the size of a soccer ball, curled up in the fetal position, rests on my bed. Disappears instantaneously, as does the vacuum sound. Then again, years later, making the right choices, still not quite there yet. Asleep. Can't move. Vacuum sound. I easily wrest it from its grip. As I open my eyes, I hear a voice screaming in a language I don't understand. Low-pitched voice sounds angry, desperate. Me, waking up, cutted it off. I was an atheist back in the days, but became a believer. My life has also drastically improved since then. I don't have all the answers, but I suspect that this might have been a lesser demon attached to me. It was mighty in my early adulthood as I fed it through my sin and despair. It declined as I got better, and now it's nearly gone.
Funny, I had a similar experience with something I can barely call an entity. I don't know about demons. Personally, I believe that's like a Christian trademark. Jinns, Zitzimitl, Oni, entity is more educated in my opinion. The thing was pale, thin, and tall like bamboo, vaguely forming the silhouette of a human, same modus operandi. He used to chase me in my dreams to then make me fall asleep inside my dream, a sleep paralysis state inside a dream. Then he made me watch him approach slowly and scare the sleep out of me. Weird ass guy, not gonna lie. One usual morning of continuous nightmares, I managed to grab him by the arm. Just after breaking out of the sleep paralysis inside my dream, I woke up calmly and never had to see it again. I also had a kind of wooden African totem in my room. I used to attribute it to the dreams. I remember more than once waking up with the thing watching directly to my bed when I used to turn it to the wall mostly every night. The thing felt worthless. I even had to throw it out visiting my mother's a few weeks ago.
I'll share, it's been long enough. Be 12 and living with my mom. Move into the house with a new stepdad. Dude's a cop and a douche, but 12, so meh. Get put into a room meant for his newborn daughter. Both him and mom had gone through divorces. I guess shit seeks shit. First couple months, no complaints, really everything was normal. One day, mom comes home with an Indian statue. The statue is a creepy woman carrying a basin of water. A couple of weeks go by, me and my sister decide to prank my mom. Take a statue and put it into their master bed bathroom and lulls. Mom comes home, gets scared, and yells at us, angrily putting the statue back into the living room. Lulls was had. We left the statue alone in fear of being spanked. This was how I think everything started. Whatever we pissed off never left me alone, and I think is still with me today. Continue? One day, mom comes home and starts dinner rather than going to the restroom first. After dinner, she goes into the restroom. The shriek of horror made me and my sister jump and run into her room. She smacked both of us silly, literally abuse-style, screaming at us in Spanish. I never really learned it, so it went over my head. After our ass-kicking, she took the statue to the garage, handling it rather roughly, screaming at us while doing so. She swore that if the statue moved again, we would not live to see the light of day. Later that night, I cussed my sister out. "The hell, Anon, you got my ass kicked." She looked at me shocked and replied, "I thought you did it." Look at each other for a moment and do nothing. Decide to go to bed. First night terror I can remember. An old woman was looking at me inside my closet, just staring at me. Her features were vague at first. I could only tell she was old and her hair was very untamed. Woke up in a cold sweat and slept with the lights on. For a few weeks everything was fine. No new dreams, no more events. One day mom comes home and stepdad has a day off. Everything is good since he was with us the whole day. Me and the dude bonded a little, but still was an asshole cop. Mom starts small talk, then goes into the room to get comfortable. Then a blood-curdling scream. I still remember it was unlike anything I've heard to this day. Stepdad runs into the room screaming at us to stay in the dining room, and police mode engages. Comes outside a little white and confused and looks at us, then turns red and sighs. We both knew what was next. I'm only going to ask once. Which one of you moved the statue? Me and my sister looked at each other and then back at him, knowing we were going to get it no matter what. His belt came off and tore deeply into us, but neither of us gave in. Finally, alpha mode engaged in me. "You were with us the whole damn day you took us to the mall. How the hell did we move it?" Beating stopped, and he ordered us to bed. Nursing our backs, we complied. Second nightmare. The hag was outside my closet, pacing a few feet back and forth, never taking her eyes off me, almost like a wild animal stalking prey. Her eyes I could now see black, hair still unkempt, and a smile that looked only of rotted teeth. Her eyes never breaking their hold, I woke up almost crying and went into the living room and watched adults swim till daylight. Yu Yu Hakusho for the win. This time there was no lapse. It was almost as if everything was going down regardless of mental fortitude. The statue found its way into my mom's room again, this time while I was visiting my real dad. Upon return, the statue was in the dumpster. She told us that she thought it was bringing bad spirits into the house. No one objected. A couple of weeks later, stepdad comes into the living room pale and confused. Me and sis look at him while chowing down on breakfast. "Sup, J-Man?" He just looks at us and shakes his head, heading back to the room and returning with the statue. Me and my sis lose our appetites on the spot when looking at the statue. "Please just break it and toss it," and I pleaded in my mind, but the words were unable to manifest. It looked as though my sis had the same thoughts. He stared at it for some time and took it out into the backyard, throwing it over the fence, then heading back inside the house. That night, I remember it like the back of my hand. We ordered 2 Domino's pizzas, 1 pepperoni, 1 mushroom and olives. We drank and watched 2 movies, Gladiator, my fave, and The Warriors, since it was the guy's choice. At around 10:30, all the movies were done and we sat talking for a moment. Right as I was saying how Russell Crowe was just too damn awesome, the back door flung open, putting a hole in the wall with knob. We all stared at the door, unsure of what we just witnessed. No one is moving for a while. Finally, stepdad closed the door, locking it tightly, and mentioned the wind must have picked up. We all went to bed. This is when Night Terror 3 happened. This time she stood over me, her mouth agape and her eyes piercing my very mind and soul. She never touched me that night, but had a look on her face that said, "I have you now." I couldn't wake up. She had me and just stared. When I was able to come out of it, I felt sick and my bed was soaked from sweat and possible urine. Either way, I vowed to never sleep in that room again. That morning, something was wrong in the house. Everyone was quiet but very irritable. I tried to make small talk to ease the tension, only to be yelled at or told to shut up. With a shrug, I complied and watched TV, alternating between Cartoon Network and Final Fantasy X. At around 8, everyone seemed tense still and retired to their rooms to either watch TV or, in my sister's case, talk on the phone. I got a pillow and a blanket and got comfortable on the couch, content with playing the shit out of Final Fantasy X and watching the Saint Beast episode of Yu Yu Hakusho unfold. At around 4 a.m., my need to sleep became more prevalent than my fear of being visited, plus she wouldn't strike twice, right? Wrong, it held nothing back this time. Until this day, it's my worst experience with her yet. Sleeping on the couch, I'm awoken by something scratching the walls. I look into the hallway to see what it may be. Perhaps the dog wanted to be let out. But not. It was her. She looked around the corner of the hallway slowly, with a deathly smile scratching the hallway as she approached the couch slowly. This is the only time she has ever spoken to me. "You cannot escape me." All in a hushed tone that made my mind bleed to hear. She came over to me and slapped me violently, laughing before slapping me again and scratching up my face. All the while, her hoarse laughter filled my mind. She had no compassion, no remorse, nothing. If there is a thing as evil she was, it manifested. When I awoke, my face was scratched up, so was my back and arm. I couldn't bear it anymore and ran to my mom crying like a little wuss. Her face didn't change expression, instead turned into the old woman. A threat within another dream before I finally awoke that night. Almost to say, if you fucking tell anyone, you know what will happen. When I really awoke, I had no scratches but was bruised on my cheek and on my arms and back and chest. My mom questioned me, but I played it off, saying I fell off the couch really hard when I fell asleep and it wasn't that big of a deal. I never wanted to sleep again. The fear of nighttime causes such anxiety I thought I would have a heart attack sometimes. I pleaded with her to let me spend the night at my grandma's, and she agreed, saying it would do me some good to stay with them and my uncle for a while. At my grandma's, I felt at peace, hoping and praying she would not follow. My uncle, the coolest person in the world, was still living with his mom. He introduced me to Final Fantasy online. My first MMO. I remember falling in love with that game, loving everything about it. The first night I couldn't really rest, it felt like something was tugging at my self-consciousness. Luckily, my uncle stayed up all night and slept during the day to do dynamis and such on Final Fantasy XI, so I only slept a few hours here and there. The first night, after a few days, I was too exhausted to fight the sleep now tugging at my eyelids. Inevitably, I gave in, and she visited me there as well. However, she only peered at me through the windows, never daring to venture further into the house. I felt safe, but still her eyes pierced into me and her smile never faded. She was waiting for me. I have a few theories why she never came into the home, but I'm not sure. My uncle was into the occult, but only into wardings, since he had screwed around with shadow people. Not sure how to speak of it. And my grandma was deathly religious. Statues and pictures of Jesus all over the house. A Bible in every room sort. No idea what it did, but explored the avenues. Soon my mom came to pick me up, returning me to the hellhole of a house, and everyone seemed happy to be honest upon my return. No one was tense and everything seemed good. I asked my mom where the Bible was. She looked at me confused, since I never expressed interest in church. With a shrug, she went to her room and retrieved it. Placed the Bible on my nightstand, never opening it more just to have it for comfort. I even prayed that night, asking God to watch over me and protect me from the evils of that woman who follows me. It worked in a way. She was now at the closet door again. Her eyes a deep sort of hateful anger. She had her lips pressed together. She hated me now. She hated that she couldn't come near me anymore. Her eyes screamed violence, and her body seemed to almost tremble with rage as she looked upon her prey. I woke up that morning feeling slightly comforted by the Bible in my room. The day went on uneventfully, much like any other day. That night she was still in the closet, her mouth agape in a silent scream as her eyes wrought imaginary violence upon me. I was glad she couldn't touch me or be near me, and I was almost content with becoming a full-time churchgoer, even played with the idea of becoming a missionary. A few years passed and I always had the Bible near me, never forgot it. Her visits became less and less frequent, but she would always show up at some point or another to remind me, I'm still attached to you. I turned 14, I became an edgy goth. I loved the dark. I visited graves. I played football, and was good at it and loved hurting people. But I also started to get into the occult, or as much as a 14-year-old could. Mostly rituals denouncing deities and shit, claiming to free the spirit. I also drew symbols of demons for lulls. But non-lulls was hard when she started visiting more and more frequent, her silent scream turning into a crooked smile. I spoke to my uncle on the subject once. He punched me so hard I think he did permanent brain damage. He only said this and we never spoke on it again. You have opened yourself up spiritually for an attack. Pray to God nothing becomes attached to you, you idiot. Take this and place it under your bed and start praying like you were to fortify yourself again and never ever play with this shit again, you idiot. Shrugged, but didn't put it under my bed, instead placed it in the Bible. She appeared at the foot of my bed that night, just staring at me with a look of almost pleasure. That euphoric look you see on a boxer when he lands a punch just right with the other's timing, or when a runner slips through the gap and heads in for the touchdown. She just stared at me, never moving, savoring the victory. I woke up crying. I did everything my uncle said, started praying and put the paper under my bed, read the Bible. Started going to church and repented the whole 9 yards. I just didn't want to be attacked again. I wasn't, and things were fine. She appeared to me every so often throughout my teenage years. I got turned down for my mission because of the way I dressed. I'm 25 years old now, and every so often I see that thing. I'm married and have a daughter, and I'm scared for my daughter. She says she can hear singing sometimes and asks where Mom is when my wife is at the store. The messed up thing is I've heard the singing, and I thought it was the TV. Just a couple of months ago I stopped praying, just didn't feel a need for it. Work as a welder and go to school. Can't really green text this since it's too recent. Recently I haven't felt like myself. Sometimes I feel as though a fog is clouding my judgment, but I'm aware of what I'm doing. My daughter's cat jumped on the counter and I grabbed him by the scruff of his neck. My wife said I was shaking him wildly as I did so, and he was crying in pain. I do not remember this. Sometimes I cause stupid arguments with my wife and demeanor. I know I'm doing this, but I cannot stop it. What's worse is my wife told me a few days ago, she said she had a dream. My wife was standing in the door jamb and she saw an old woman sitting on my chest rubbing my face and only said mine in a slow, raspy voice. I have started praying again slowly, trying to fortify myself, also forms of meditation. But I'm just so fucking tired of this goddamn cat and mouse game. What scares me worse is my daughter sometimes plays with someone imaginary, and me in my fear told her they aren't real and to stop it. God, this sucks. Thank you for listening, X. I just needed to get that shit off my chest.
True story that happened in 2012. Will probably be long. Been lurking here since 2011. Don't know if that makes me an old friend or not. This is my first post, and I have several more stories if anyone is interested. Be me in 2012. College freshman. Go to an old small Christian college. Yes, I am Christian. I'm friends with two twin brothers, Ben and Jay. Room with Ben, and we really get along. He's a bit odd, but a super nice guy and a strong Christian. Twin brother Jay is a little more socially successful than Ben, and a little more wild than Ben, but definitely doesn't have the faith relationship that Ben has with the Lord. The three of us hang out regularly. This 1 week late in the first semester, beginning of winter. Whole campus has an oppressive feel to it. Everyone is feeling depressed. A lot of gray skies and feelings of loneliness. Friends are not hanging out as much, people having trouble sleeping, nightmares, etc. It's just bad vibes for like a week. Jay and I are walking back to the dorm at night. Had a good day just chilling playing video. We make plans to go out to a local restaurant tomorrow and say goodnight. Overall, everything seems fine. That night I talked to Ben about going to eat at this restaurant tomorrow night. We say goodnight and go to bed. This is where it all goes crazy. Wake up at 5 a.m. to our room door opening. Enter Jay's roommate. He wakes up Ben and has a quick, hushed conversation with him. I can't make out what they're saying. Kinda weirded out because this kid just entered our room early in the morning and is having a seemingly urgent conversation with my roommate in the dark. Jay's roommate leaves and I ask Ben what he said. Ben says he told him that Jay is acting super weird and won't go to bed. Ben was tired, so he just told the roommate to get out. Like 15 minutes later, my roommate re-enters our dorm room. Jay's roommate is now visibly upset. He says that Jay has gone crazy. Ben and I are a little freaked out but try to blow him off. Tell him to go back to bed. He complies. He opens the door cautiously and looks up and down the hallway before sprinting away. At this point, I'm not going back to bed, and I like to get up early anyway, so I get up and get my stuff to go shower. We have a shower room in the hall, so I have to exit our dorm room and head down the hall to the showers and bathrooms. I tell Ben I'm going to shower and then I'll check on Jay. He grunts and goes to sleep. I exit our room and a feeling of anticipation and adrenaline hits me. It's like my brain and body knew something was about to happen. The hallway is pitch black and looks similar to PIC-related. I look down the hallway and see a figure scramble behind the water fountain in the hall and attempt to conceal themselves behind it. A person was crawling on all fours like a dog. They quickly scrambled with jerky, almost nauseating movements. At this point, my fight or flight kicks in and I yell at them to come out and quickly approach them. The shadow stands up and it's Jay. Ask him what he's doing. Just stares at me. Ask him why he's hiding. Just stares at me. Notice he has something in his hand. Ask him what he has. Just this knife. Holds up a fully extended folding knife. I am terrified. I'm full of adrenaline and angry, so in an authoritative voice I tell him to go back to his room. He says nothing and turns around and goes to his room. I feel like I need to follow him, go into his room. It is dark and my roommate is nowhere to be seen. He sits on his bed. I tell him in an authoritative manner to give me the knife. He hands it over to me. I go to sit in the chair next to his bed. Watch out, he mumbles. I look at the chair and it is covered in vomit. I turn on the light to his room. Vomit everywhere. I look at Jay. His lips are incredibly chapped and gross. His skin is so pale it's almost transparent. Eyes are glossed over and bulging. Looks dead. I tell him we need to take him to the nurse. He says no. I asked him what happened. He says that he was just playing with his knife all night. He starts now saying small, incoherent phrases. I can't remember what he said, but it all made no sense. In between his phrases, he would just stare at me with his dead eyes and say nothing. Call the school nurse. Describe his symptoms and tell her that he must be hallucinating because he's talking to people who aren't there. She says to take him to the ER and asks to speak with him. I put her on speaker. She asks if he's thinking about hurting himself or others. Without hesitation, he says he's thinking about hurting others. I grip the knife tighter. She asks if he's taken anything. He manages to say that he took a whole bottle of sleeping pills last night. He's lucky he puked or he'd be dead. Take him to the ER, literally the last time I ever saw him. His parents apparently checked him into a psych ward. He stopped talking to all of us after that night. This attempted and hero began a series of happenings at our university. What follows are some events that happened the week following Jay's hero attempt. I will attempt to answer questions after I'm done posting the story. Obviously, everyone hears about Jay and is talking about what a weird and awful week it has been on campus. People begin to come together and admit their suicidal thoughts and talk about their depression. Ben and I don't feel right about what happened with Jay. It seemed just wrong. He had made plans with us for the next day. I couldn't understand what happened. I begin to talk with other people in the hall. They all tell me they are having trouble sleeping, nightmares, feelings of loneliness, etc. Ben and I truly feel like there is some sort of spiritual/demonic attack going on in our university. Everything just feels wrong. Ben and I decided to start a prayer group on campus for the week, to just pray against these feelings and this oppressive spirit. Like 15 people show up. Way more than we expected. They all feel it too and want to pray against it. We pray and feel so much better. We start to share our stories. A female friend confides in us that her roommate saw a shadow figure in their room the other night, and since then, they've been too afraid to go back in there. We pray over her, and we all say our goodbyes. That night I'm asleep and suddenly I'm awake. Not sleep paralysis, I am aware and can move. I have my bed lofted over my desk, probably 6 feet off the ground. At first I'm confused because all I see is black. I realize I'm looking at a black mass in the shape of a head right in front of my face. So afraid my brain barely registered what it was seeing. The black head then floated or descended down in a very slow, smooth motion under my bed and out of view. Again, the feeling of anticipation and adrenaline. I sit up. Out of nowhere, I am punched in the stomach by an unknown assailant. It hit me in the stomach. As soon as it hit me, the feeling of dread vanished and I doubled over in pain. I jumped out of bed and woke up Ben and turned on the lights. No one was in the room and the door was still locked. I know it was a demonic attack. Don't feel afraid now, just angry. We pray together and both feel very empowered. I went back to bed, but for the rest of the night, I had a terrible, terrible stomach ache. The ache did not go away until well into the next day. I told no one about the gut punch except Ben and told him to tell no one. The next night before bed, I all of a sudden feel led to leave our room and go pray over each and every door in our hall. It's about 10 p.m. I lay hands on every door in our hall and pray. Slept well that night. Next day we meet up with a prayer group again. We all pray and then talk. I talk to a female friend. She says that last night they all slept well and in their own rooms. She says that in the middle of the night she got the urge to get up and go pray over every single door in her hall. So she gets up and prays over every door. I am amazed because I hadn't said anything about what I did last night. I ask her what time she did this. She says 10 p.m. I informed her that I had the same feeling and did the same thing at the same time last night. We're amazed and pray again. After that week, everything went back to normal and improved. Totally true story, and I will try to answer any and all questions. Thanks, guys. Got some other creepy stories from that university as well as some other in general creepy stories. I was a wilderness guide for years and Christian missionary overseas and saw some demonic stuff.
I want to hear about the demonic stuff.
Can't really go into details without making a whole other thread. Here are some quick details. Basically, I was made violently sick on a mission trip to Puerto Rico. I was going there to join a local church and praying over a local area of their town that had become the area of interest for a satanic cult. Basically, we were doing a prayer walk through that section of town and then pray in an abandoned parking garage where the cult was meeting. As soon as I touched down, I vomited. I never get carsick/plane sick. I could not stop vomiting for 2 days while I was there. I lost 10 pounds in 2 days. It only stopped when I went out that night to actually go do our prayer walk. The local pastor told me the cultists were trying to curse us, and I must have gotten the brunt of it. Another time when I was in Central America, a man entered my house with a machete. For some reason, I had got to bed early after my Bible study that night, and the room was dark enough he didn't see me. OP here. My brother went to the same university as me and also experienced a creepy situation. Basically, he and some friends had a weird feeling and then saw a balloon unattended in the student center. It started making some unnatural movements and led them into the basement of the building. When they reached the basement, their phones died. They asked the student center workers about it, and all of them said that the basement creeps them out, and they have heard whispers coming from down there at night. Anon from the university happening thread yesterday where I talked about my own paranormal experience at this school. Now, I've talked to my brother about his experience at our college, and he gave me the whole story. My brother and I went to a small Christian university in the USA. The following is his paranormal experience there. Brother and friends hanging out in the evening at the student center. Not many other people there. Really just the 4 of them chilling. 3 guys and 1 girl. A bunch of deflated/half-inflated balloons all over. There was some kind of party last night and it didn't get cleaned up. After talking for a while, one of the guy friends points out that a certain balloon is being weird. He points and they all look. The balloon is half inflated and is floating around about 3 feet off the ground. All the other balloons are resting on the ground all over and are not moving. The way this balloon moved is what creeped them out. It would float forward and make turns to float in another direction. It would turn so that the same face of the balloon was always facing the direction of travel. So it would move forward, then stop, then the whole balloon would rotate to face its new direction of travel, and then it would proceed forward. They begin to get really creeped out watching and talking about this balloon. It moves at a smooth, steady pace, never speeding up or slowing down, and truly appears as if it is moving intentionally, always having its face towards the direction of travel. The way it would stop and turn itself to face a new direction is what was scaring them. One of the guys says, "Wouldn't it be terrifying if it comes over here and sits in this empty chair?" There was an empty sofa chair next to them. Sure enough, as if it heard them, it turns, its face towards the group, and slowly makes its way to them. It smoothly floats to the sofa chair and stops on it. They are freaking out at this point. The balloon then slowly floats away from the group towards an open staircase that leads to the basement of the student center. At this point, the whole group is freaking out. They are fake, laughing in disbelief and trying to figure out what to do. My brother suggests they follow it, and his friend pulls out his phone to get a video of it. They go to the stairs. The balloon is still 3 feet off the ground and slowly descends each step in a smooth motion. Friend videos the whole thing. In the video, you can see the balloon going down the stairs and then stopping at the bottom. It rotates its face to face the left hallway and proceeds down it. The video ends there because they all scream and freak out when it rotates to face the direction of travel. They continue down the stairs to follow it. The basement doesn't have much in it. It's just 2 hallways with locked doors and closets. Students aren't meant to go down there as there's nothing for them down there. The balloon floats to a set of double doors. Normally, the room behind these doors is dark. However, this time there is a light on in the room shining through the crack in the double doors. The balloon now floats to the ground and doesn't move anymore. The group is very afraid, and one guy decides he'll take a picture of what's in the room through the crack in the double doors. He opens his camera, and his phone battery just dies. He says it was around 70%. They all freak out and leave. I have been shown the video several years ago, and it is super creepy watching the balloon move so unnaturally. My brother is not a liar or a prankster. I believe him even without having seen the video. I asked him to get me the video to post here last night, and he told me that it was on his old phone which died, suddenly losing all his media. However, his friend supposedly still has the video, and we are working on contacting him to get it. If he has it, and I can get it, I'll post it here.
I'm going to make a long story short, but here's one that haunts me to this very day. It was at least a year ago. Late at night, the whole family was home, but asleep, Me and my girlfriend at the time were fighting and had just got off the phone after another one of our dramatic bullshit arguments. So there I was, laying on my bed, on my laptop, headphones in and the TV on in the background. I had just got off the phone with her when out of nowhere I hear 3 loud taps on my window, which is directly above my head. So I jump up and turn the lights on, heart beating, frozen still in front of the window, staring through the blinds. The first thing your mind does is try to rationalize it and try and find a logical reason. In my head, I went down a mental checklist of who it could possibly be. But there was literally no one it could have been, not even my girlfriend. I slowly gathered myself and sat back down and looked at my phone. I noticed I had a missed call from my girlfriend, and after having the shit scared out of me, I was definitely over our argument. So when I call her back, the first thing she tells me is that she's scared. I ask why, and she says, and I shit you not, I heard someone tapping on my window.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.